Dímelo, mi gente. Okay, so I am in the business of selling a vehicle. I sell a very special kind of vehicle. This vehicle is really awesome. It's a vehicle that you're able to take from point A to point Z. And the gas mileage on this vehicle is infinity. It's amazing. It's been around for a really long time. Now, this vehicle that I sell it to a particular population. This population is really, really hard. They're difficult. It's hard to convince them. They're teenagers, okay? I sell a vehicle to teenagers, and I try to tell them that buying into this education is going to get them from point A to point Z. Not only do I do that, I try to convince teachers to also purchase this vehicle because it's also going to help them in the community. It's going to help them personally and professionally to also get from point A to point Z. The thing is that makes it really difficult about this vehicle of education is I got a lot of kids who seem to think that they're bad kids. They think that they've been set up by this system and there's really no investment for them. I'm here to tell them otherwise. The question is, how do I convince them? I do it by something really simple. Now work with me, right? So it's a long-term game. It's called Love Tough. Love Tough. Love Tough is the idea that you love somebody regardless of how many times they give you a reason not to. Those students that kind of give you a reason to kick them out of class, Love Tough. Those kids that you tell them over and over to make the right move, okay, and they make the same mistake over and over again, Love Tough. Love Tough, because it's worth it, literally. If a child drops out of school, nationally there's an 80% chance that they're going to end up in prison. 80% chance. Not only is there an 80% chance that if a child does not have a high school diploma or GED that they end up in prison, but there's a 1 in 3 chance that their children are going to end up in prison. So it's not just about recidivism for the individual, but we're talking about generational recidivism. We're also talking about, specifically in the state of Rhode Island, we have a population that is 23.7% Black Latino. 23.7 Black Latino population. In the ACI, the Adult Correctional System over here in Rhode Island, we are 56.7% of the population. Now, I'm not no math genius, but I understand that that doubles, and that there's a problem with that. I also understand that when somebody goes to prison, the cost of it is $30,000 to $60,000 nationally. That's not including how much it costs to pay the correction officers, the police officers, the probation and parole officers, your lawyer, your judge, your social worker, therapist, the pharmaceutical companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The prison system is not an industry that makes millions or billions, it actually makes trillions. How much does it cost to educate a child? $14,000 to $25,000. $14,000 to $25,000. There may not be a lot of money that you may make off it, but trust me, it's worth it. Love Tough. I take it personally. Because myself, I grew up over here in the city of Providence, respectively, in the South Side. All right. And the West End, respectively, off Manhattan Heights. I went to a school that seemed to me, it was a little bit weird at the time. Actually, this picture that you see up here, that's the elementary school I went to. That's the back portion of the school. If I could find a front portion of the picture, I would show it to you. But when I grew up on that street called Jocelyn, I remember walking to school, 6 years old, and, well, that's not the one. Well, that ain't. Oh man, that ain't working. All right, man, we're gonna keep it going then. So, when I was walking towards school, I remember seeing barbed wire on the top of the school. The reason we were told that we had barbed wire on the top of our school at the buttress of it is because they said it was to keep the neighborhood kids from getting on top of the school building, because it was a one-story building, mid-century built. The window, the glass doors that we went to school, they were actually bulletproof. Inside there was a security guard. Now, I wasn't sure if that school was made to keep us safe, keep us in, or keep us out. It was really confusing to me. I also came from a very interesting household. My household was predominantly Spanish-speaking, so I went to school and the teachers would talk to me. I really had no idea what they were saying to me because I didn't speak English. So what the school did was, instead of putting me in ELL classes, they put me in special ed. I was in special ed for the majority of my elementary life. To add to it, I was coming from a very interesting and unique household. My father, I guess you could say, he was an entrepreneur that invited a lot of attention from the police, and they would pay visits to the house, sometimes unannounced, and move our furniture around without asking. There were also the domestic issues that would happen. And to compartmentalize it, after one domestic event in the house, we were left with a bullet hole in our kitchen floor. It was in a real precarious position because it was next to the stove and the kitchen table, and it was in an odd place. So what my mom used to do, I remember this, she used to take like a little piece of carpet or a mat and kind of put it there, but it was weird because who puts a mat between the stove and the kitchen table? But after a while, after that little mat, that Band-Aid to cover that blemish, to avoid it like it wasn't there, we decided to uncover it. And there it was, recognizing that blemish for what it is, a monument. A bullet hole stuck in linoleum floor with the cracked rings around it like Saturn. That was our world. We accepted it. So going to school, was I mad? Yeah, I was a little bit mad. My father was killed in a car accident when I was 9. And so I was bringing all this energy to school. And then the school I went to was a traditional monolithic kind of school, Perry Middle School. We're talking about 1:30 ratio, maybe about 800 kids across the street from Hartford Projects. I didn't know the teachers, and the teachers didn't know me. You're going to learn about English and science and history. I got problems with home economics right now. You really better get on my face with that. I was honest. I was brutally honest. I got kicked out of class a lot for being honest. I was suspended a couple times. I was marked as a kid that had a behavior problem. Abraham has anger management problems. The last time I remember being suspended from Perry Middle School, I was accused of stealing $20 from my teacher's purse. I didn't do it, but to this day, I really do believe that she made it up to get me out of that school. And then a school came UCAP. UCAP stands for the Urban Collaborative Accelerated Program. Now, UCAP was founded by this guy named Rob Du Bois. I call him Roberto. And him and a bunch of like-minded educators decided to make a school for kids that were considered quote-unquote high risk. Certain socioeconomic class, you've had to have stayed back at least 1 year. You could accelerate. That was the caveat for the school. You can make 2 years in 1. Potentially some kids had a history of behavioral problems. This was the school for you. This was the vehicle that was going to help you get from point A to point Z and avoid the penitentiary. So here I am, young teenager, going to UCAP. You think I get it? No, I was still kind of getting in trouble, being brutally honest. But I remember there were a lot of teachers who knew me. They knew my name. We call the teachers by first name basis. It wasn't Mr. or Miss, it was first name. The classes were small. They weren't 1 to 30, okay? They were 1 to 14, maybe 1 to 11 even. It was a small school, 100 kids in that school. Curriculum was a little bit odd, okay? It wasn't just about history, it was your story, their story, her story, our story. There was no bells. Not like a factory where the bell rings and then you got to go to your next station and then you go to the next station, but you paid attention to the sound and you made the movement. They also had a program where they took kids out of their urban environment and they brought them into different parts of New England. For the first time, I had a chance to go camping. I went to Newport. That was exotic for me, right? And that was exotic for everybody because nobody really left the South Side, or the Heights. But they would also give the opportunity for the child to go on these trips, but the family also. Free 99. It gave the family an experience to experience something outside of the urban environment for families that sometimes couldn't afford to take trips like this. There was a lot of love tough. To give you an example, I remember one day after wrestling practice, hey, all right. I remember after wrestling practice, passing by the cafeteria, and I noticed that the vending machine was open, and the vending machine guy put all the candy and the chips and whatever in there, and he left, which was a big mistake. And so anyway, so I saw it, and I'm like, yo, like, what's up? Like, hey. So me and two of my teammates, we went to the vending machine, and we ransacked that sucker from top to bottom, put it all in my duffel bag, and I bounced out. We met up outside the school, and I distributed, because I was the one with the duffel bag. I'm the leader on this one. I'm distributing all the candy. I'm like, all right, cool, we out. The next day, that guy Rob, the director of the school, he calls me to his office. Now, he's a real interesting individual because he's like this white guy in a wheelchair, right? And so here he is with all thunder, right? And he's basically reaming me in his office. And Abraham, I have reason to believe that you and some guys on the wrestling team ransacked the vending machine. Nah, Rob, it wasn't me, man. Nah, it wasn't me, man. It wasn't me. Abraham, I'm gonna ask you again. I got reason to believe that you were the one that ransacked it. Nah, man. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't me. You know what I mean? I ain't no snitch, right? And he got in me so hard. There were probably a couple swear words here and there, but through the whole thing, love tough, he didn't kick me out. I was nervous. I mean, my hands were sweaty. I was trying to be cool, but I was like, listen, man, I just got kicked out of Perry. UCAP is, oh man, all right, cool, man. This is my last chance right here. I don't want to go back to Perry. He's going to kick me out. It's over. It's a wrap. Abraham, get out of my office. Go to class. You think I'd get it after that? I didn't. Okay? I still got into another fight. I was a good kid, though. I wasn't a bad kid. I was really charismatic. I had a smile on my face. But, man, I made mistakes. It was going to happen. But it was love tough. I got love tough from all those people that were there. I don't remember none of my bad teachers. I just remember the good ones. Okay? And I think that's where everybody, Rob, Al, Chris, Brian Scott, Nancy Mullen, Miss Martino, Mr. Thomas, Miss Thomas. I don't remember none of the bad ones. I only remember the good ones. Love tough. After I finished with UCAP, I went to Mount Pleasant, and it was regular traditional school, 30 kids in a class, go in the back of class, put my head down, go to sleep. But there were people during my journey that always loved tough. I eventually ended up graduating, skin in my teeth, going to college, and really understanding that I wasn't in an island of myself, that I was a part of something much bigger. So I ended up just learning and reading. The more you know, the more you get paid. The less you know, the more you get played. That's what I always tell my kids. You better get with this game because you're going to get played out, all right? So you got to read. You got to get that education. I ended up teaching in the prison system for juveniles and for adults. But not just teaching. I decided I had an affinity. I wanted to press the buttons. So I went to be an administrator. And I went to be an administrator for the first time at a school named Paul Cuffey, located over here in the South Side. Beautiful school. During my time over there at Paul Cuffey, there were some issues that you might find with a lot of traditional schools. For example, staff not really representing the color of the students or the culture of the students, vice versa. A lot of kids were getting kicked out of class. We had an insane office referral. Kids were getting kicked out of class for the simplest things. Throwing a pencil, it doesn't work, okay? But it was through convincing people, being put in a position to take restorative practice, to practice it in the classroom, for teachers to have buy-in, to understand that kids make mistakes. Kids are 14, 15 years old. They don't know everything. Humanity's been around for millions of years. We haven't figured out war and peace, right? How are we going to send a kid out of the school, write them off? They've only been on Earth for 14 years. It was through having things like restorative practice and Love Tough, putting notes in kids' lockers, so when they'd open it, they'd find something positive. For them to say, hey, I noticed that you helped your classmate today at the cafeteria table. That's random. That's a Jedi mind trick, okay? That's you catch a kid doing something good, and guess what? You make that phone call home. I don't want to make the bad phone calls. I do it as part of the gig, but I'm going to make that good phone call. Hey, I want to let you know that your child was recognized today for this, that, and the other. Because that child in their head, thinks they're bad, they're no good. They think that's just the way it is. I get it from my mom, I get it from my dad. And guess what? That's not the vehicle that you want to drive. It's okay sometimes, but I got a better vehicle that you have to purchase. That's going to get you from point A to point Z, and that's the tough love where it comes in. We were able, as a concerted effort, as a team, as a group of people, to drop the behavior referral system into the office by 60%. It's that Love Tough, that regardless of how many times a kid is going to give you an excuse to kick them out, okay, you don't give them that easy way out, because they are so much more valuable than you expect. Remember that story I told you about me going to the vending machine? A couple years ago, I went back to UCAP, and I went with about $40 or $50 worth of snacks. And I went to Rob and I said, Rob, I'm sorry. About 20 years ago, I'm the one that ransacked the vending machine, and my bad, man, I'm sorry. But thank you. Thank you for loving tough. Thank you. So, love your kids. Love tough regardless of how many times a kid may give you an excuse to give up on them. Don't. Because eventually you don't know how they're going to come pay you back. I'm happy to say, as I stand over here, that I'm currently the Dean of Student Culture at the UCAP school. I'm also very happy to say that I'm also an aspiring principal, and more than anything, I'm happy to say that I'm enjoying every moment with my son. Love tough.